Two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
The playoffs are on national television. It's high profile. The games matter. Every game count. This is it. One and done.
Prime time.
And in prime time, and that damn Kirk Cousins, that dude, okay? God. We don't see that come playoff time. And we ain't going to see that come playoff time. I'm just not a believer. Now, I will stand corrected once I'm corrected. But if you asking me coming into, as the playoffs approach, how much I believe in them, the answer is little to none. I believe in Dalvin Cook. I believe in Justin Jefferson. I believe in those two dudes, yes. Do I believe in them led by Kirk Cousins? I got to see it to believe it.
Disrespect, the continued disrespect of the fourth quarter pharaoh, Mr. Game-winning drive, Kirky McClutcherton, Stephen A. Smith. What will it take for Stephen A. Smith, basically the king talking head of national talking heads, to believe in the Vikings? That's my question.
At least a playoff win, if not two, and who knows? Like he's salivating at the thought of taking the airwaves the day after a Vikings playoff loss in which Kirk Cousins melts down and just saying, I
you
told
like that?
you so.
You like
I
that?
told you so. Yep, exactly. That is what Stephen A. lives for.
So, yeah, we're just kind of stockpiling all of the doubters and the haters out there. Yesterday, we talked about the notion that the Vikings are frauds. Actually, I think Eric Eager, our friend from Pro Football Focus previously, now he's been ripped away from Pro Football Focus to help with a top secret football analytics project. He's one of the great football analytics minds in our nation. And he actually just tweeted right before we hit the microphones. He said, I've mostly stayed away from the Vikings are frauds discussion because, and then he lists a few reasons, like the betting markets have caught up to it, so it's not really a talker on that front anymore. It's fun seeing them win games. And if someone can't be convinced that one-score games have no signal at all whatsoever, it's not worth the argument. Basically saying, yeah, of course, like being 9-0 in one-score games is not likely to repeat itself. Which is the point that I wanted to make yesterday. Okay. Let's say they're 7-2 instead of 9-0 or something, or they're 6-3. They're still like if you give them two losses against the Bills and pick another one score, maybe the Jets punch it in for a touchdown or something, you blow that lead. All right, they're still 8-4. They've still got Justin Jefferson. They've still got weapons all over the place on offense and Kirk in the fourth quarter. So. Yeah, I'm kind of, it's amusing at this point, but I think we've gone so far off the deck with this. They're frauds. It's like, it's December. They can't be that big of frauds at this point.
And it's so interesting because, like, you can find simple statistics, advanced metrics to say, yeah, they're not that good. But at some point in time, you've won 9 consecutive one-score games. So you're winning when it matters most.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, the other thing is, it's not lucky to be this good in the fourth quarter. Like this is the problem. Like last year's team, in my opinion, what was not good. It's very close to this team, but what was the difference? When it was winning time a year ago, they couldn't do the job.
Yeah.
Now they are. And if you have, let's say you have two really close wins and there's luck involved, then yes, that's luck. But 9 games can't be luck.
Yes, there can be some noise. Maybe you're more like 7-2 over the long run instead of 9-0, but you're still good. You're really, really good. Actually, Boone brought up a great point last night on Trench's Purple Daily. It dropped this morning where he breaks down film and takes us through some of the key plays and whatnot. And he said, we were talking about the concept of being lucky. And I said, on the outside looking in, you would say, boy, the Vikings have won 3 games in which their defense has forced a turnover as the offense crossed the 50-yard line or the red zone looking to win, right? Like they strip Amir Smith-Marset, they pick off Josh Allen, they pick off Mike White. And so on the outside looking in, like those interceptions, you're saying, whoo, boy, if you hadn't picked off that pass, things would have gotten dicey. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I said, Patrick Peterson goes on his podcast after his interception against the Bills. And I think I saw that Cam Bynum had put a photo up of his notes or something from the week showing we scouted that look. And Patrick Peterson does the breakdown explaining exactly how he told his teammates, if they run this play in overtime, the game is over. I will intercept this pass. And he did. Film study preparation, situational football preparation,
Situational
right?
masters.
How much of that is luck if you prepared for it? And Boone naturally agreed because it was a brilliant point by Mackey. But he said, yeah, there's times in games, even as an offensive lineman, where we broke a big run in a big spot to get a first down to clinch a game because I knew exactly what the defensive tackle's tendency would be, and I moved his body to this place to open up a hole for our running back because I saw on film that he does this on this play or whatever, right? Oh, it's lucky you got that run. Maybe, but on Thursday when I was watching film at home as a left guard, I saw this tendency, and I was more prepared maybe than he was. So the lines are very blurred between what's lucky and what's preparation here.
And I think it's actually pretty simple, though, because it's, okay, luck is this. Luck is if you have a year where in the, turnover differential, you're like plus 12, right? That's some fortune there. Now, you forced them, but some years you get fortune there and guys drop footballs but single games and where Bynum picks the pass off or Peterson does, that's not luck. I think the fairest thing that you can say, like if you're looking to poke holes here and you're looking to denigrate the 2022 Vikings, I think the fairest thing to say is this is not predictive of 2023. So, like, I don't look at this year and say, well, they are the one-score game masters now, and wait till 23 when they win 15 of these puppies. I think that's a very fair statement. Yeah. But within a season, and we've all covered teams and seen this in their own way, good and bad. Within a season, at some point in time, how you do things is your identity. So the 2022 Vikings have an identity. It might drive the fan base crazy because it leads to heartburn and it leads to accelerated heart rates.
Yeah.
But the identity of this team is very much clear. And I don't think your identity is luck. I think it's your identity.
And to your point about the predictiveness of it, there are some predictive things that you should, if you're this far into a season and the Vikings are, can't remember the exact stat, but it was like of the 53 teams that have been 10-2 over some period of time, the Vikings have the worst point differential by far. They're a plus 10. The next team is like a plus 36 or something on that list. Mm-hmm. And so there is some predictive value in that. Okay, if you keep playing one-score games for 100 games or something, you're probably not going to win 10 out of every 12. But in this small sample size snapshot, this is what you're doing this season. You don't have to apologize. It's not all luck. But maybe for next year, you should build it into your equation when you're working out. Okay, let's say you finished 14-3 because you went 10-0 in one-score games or something. Maybe you would build it into your roster building equation that, okay, we were a 14-win team, but there's probably going to be some bad luck in there. So let's go through the offseason like we are a 10-win team trying to get to 12 or 13, right? Like there's baseball examples of this too. I remember there was like a Mariners team 10 or 12 years ago that thought, was it the Mariners and Orioles made a trade involving Adam Jones because I think the Mariners thought they were going to trade for Eric Bedard, the starting pitcher. So they traded like 4 of their top prospects thinking, oh, we won 87 games. We just need this pitcher to get to 90. But they had a minus 30 run differential. So, yeah, like don't apologize for your 87 wins. But if you ran that season back, you're probably more like an 80-win team or a 78-win team. So, but that actually brings us to an interesting question here from a listener, loyal listener, Alex. And it's about the window that the Vikings may or may not be walking into here. And we had a discussion yesterday on one of our shows. I think the Vikings, because of their offensive line youth, and I think because of Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson is 25 years old. There's some good young defenders on this team. I don't think it's a one-and-done situation. But Alex brings up an interesting point. I'm just going to read you guys this email. He says, you mentioned on Monday that you think the Vikings window is open for the next few years, and this season they are now playing with house money. Typically, I agree with you, but I couldn't disagree more on this point. If you look around the roster, Kirk is going to be a year older, 35 years old for next season. Thielen will be all but done next year. Dalvin a year further into his workhorse career. Zadarius Smith's contract will go up. Pat Pete is playing on that same contract. Kendricks is a year older. Hunter is due a ton of money. And the defense isn't even good right now. For me, this is the season they have to make a deep run. I'm all but certain this team probably goes 7-10 or worse next season because they will 100% run this team back because of the success they're having right now. But every underlying metric tells us this team is not 10-2 good. They need to take advantage. If the Vikings front office and ownership think the window is open for another year or two, they will pay a hefty price for that mistake.
That's
what do you guys
interesting. I totally get what he's saying. So football's weird, first of all. So I don't know that you necessarily see teams have the runs that fans would like to see, i.e. the Rams right now, right? The Rams had a lot go right last year. They had a hell of a year. They played great, and now they are a dumpster fire. I don't know if that's predictive of 2023 or if they bounce back. But where I get his point is, yes, there was a conscious decision made not to go the Ryan Poles direction of stripping this thing down to the studs and saying, let's get good in 2-3 years. So there are guys that are going to be gone and things that are going to change for sure. So I get his point. I sort of agree with the point, but here's where I think that I can come to your side a bit as well, Phil. They've got some good young players. I mean, Justin Jefferson is going to be signed to an extension that won't kick in for 2 more years because he's still on a rookie contract.
Yeah.
Replacing Dalvin Cook is not impossible. He is a very good player at a position at which I can find you a guy. Patrick Peterson's gone, so that potentially, so that could be a problem. But if you trust, and the jury's out here, but if you trust that O'Connell and especially Kwesi know what they're doing, you can certainly fill in pieces here. Now, do I expect the 2023 Vikings to be as good as this team? Probably not. But that being said, I don't think it's an all or nothing. My personal philosophy is to strip things down and build back up, but going the direction that the Vikings have, they certainly proved it can work. And I don't think it necessarily across the board spells doom and gloom for the next couple of years. But there are going to be guys who are gone, and there are going to be guys who need to be gone just for contractual purposes of keeping your young talent.
Windows are weird in sports, and the NFL is a sport where it's kind of hard to be exceptionally bad for a long period of time. Now, there's examples, even recently, but it's difficult. It's a league that's set up where if you're bad, you can kind of pop up in a year and be right back in the playoff conversation. I like to believe that the Vikings have a Super Bowl window here that they're entering. I think year 2 next year and year 3 are going to be even more exciting. But the cautionary tale that I think some Vikings fans might be a little bit freaked out by, where maybe you have to kind of, this can go off the rails pretty quickly. Look at the Browns in 2020. So they hire a first-year coach in Kevin Stefanski, right? Baker Mayfield is kind of entering, what is he? Is he good? Is he bad? Is he a bust? But all of a sudden, that defense has some good playmakers. They have Jarvis Landry on that offense. They have a good running game. Kevin Stefanski comes in, props up a team. They win 11 games, not out of nowhere. Their over-under that season, preseason, was 8.5. So they were projected to be a somewhat decent team. They win 11 games. They take Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on the doorstep of the divisional round to get to the AFC title game, right? Next year, they kind of obviously regress hard. They don't make the playoffs. The next year, obviously, they trade for Deshaun Watson. Now he's back, and it's a PR nightmare. Think of that as a Browns fan of how fun that 2020 season was. And probably even though when you lost the AFC divisional game, thought, man, this is the start of something awesome for the next few years. This is a window. And now you're entering a new window, and with maybe a pretty good quarterback, but again, a PR nightmare that you're on right now that is classic Cleveland Browns to me. And that's where how quickly the window can just be shut when you think it's going to be open for years.
Yeah, and that is true. That is true. I don't want to take for granted. And to Alex's point, when you're 10-2, however you got there, it's an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. So you should, and they are doing everything they can. There's really nothing they can do. They can't acquire another player at this point, but they're doing everything they can internally right now to try and win that Super Bowl. I think where I feel a little bit differently now compared to maybe a year ago when we were having the should they blow the whole thing up discussion is I am much more sure about where this offensive line is headed than I was a year ago. Think about 1 year ago, we didn't know if Christian Darrisaw was good because he'd only played a few games. And he didn't really start to show you until about this time last year that, okay, this dude can play a little bit, and he's only allowing 1 pressure, 2 pressures a game. So 1 year ago, we didn't know that Darrisaw was going to be maybe one of the 3 or 5 best tackles in the NFL. Hopefully he comes back at some point healthy from the concussions. Ezra Cleveland has taken a huge step forward. So I think starting with the offensive line, they have 5 guys right now, 27 and younger. And it's the best offensive line we've seen in years here. Still has room to grow. Ed Ingram, by the way, has been a lot better the last 2 or 3 games. He's taken some steps. Pressures have come down a little bit. That's something to watch for sure. So I feel like if you've got a good young offensive line, even if you lose Bradbury because he's a free agent, you don't want to pay him, like you can find a center somewhere. I think the addition of a 25-year-old top 5 or 6 pass-catching tight end in TJ Hawkinson makes me feel different compared to a year ago. Even some of the younger defensive players, like defense has the most rebuilding to be done because of just the age of some of the players, but Cam Dantzler, he's a starter. He's a good player. I think Patrick Jones, like if you needed Patrick Jones to step in and just play, twice as many snaps and be an edge rusher, I like Patrick Jones for some depth. So Harrison Phillips is 26 years old. He wasn't on the team a year ago. So there's just they've made some nice additions and some guys that are making an impact in the last 12 months or so that have made me feel better about where they're going. Do I think they're going to just be guaranteed to win 13 games next year? No, but it is year 2 of Kevin O'Connell's system. They do have a long-term quarterback question to be answered. So I'm kind of mixed on this email from Alex, and that yes, they should treat this as a cash your chips in season, but I don't agree that they're going to pay a hefty price starting next year. If they do decide to run this whole thing back and push money again, we're going to push Kendrick's money into the future and more Adam Thielen money. At some point, they have to start saying goodbye to these bloated veteran contracts.
Yes.
So I agree with that. But I'm not ready to say that they're screwed after 2022.
There's 2 questions I've got. One is, what is the intention at quarterback? It's the most important position in sports. Is Kirk your guy? And by the way, if you think he is at this point, that's fine. But the long-term question is, do you either stick with the one that you've got, or can you find one that can step in and play and be good? If you screw that up, it will set you back. The other thing, and we don't know this, and I'm not super impressed yet, but it's one draft, is Kwesi's drafting. Because that's where you're going to need the one thing where the Vikings have gotten sort of fortunate here is how few guys from this draft have stepped in and helped. Like that is, you can't have this be like a consistent thing of, well, we got a couple guys. No, you need your first round pick. He got hurt. The Andrew Booth one is a little bit concerning because his injury history was there and you took him still second round and he's been hurt basically all year long. Mm-hmm. But I think the drafting, Phil, to marry this with your point, I'm with you. You're going to have to, as much as you might hate it, you're going to have to move on from veteran contracts and veteran players who you probably like a lot. And you're going to need to replace them with your draft class. Mm-hmm. Like it can't be in March, we've got enough to go sign a guy or 2. That's fine if you do, but the drafting is going to be the lifeblood going forward. And in my opinion, it's going to have a lot to do with how this team looks in 2 or 3 years. I would start by doing this. I wouldn't bail backwards in the draft as much as Kwesi did early on. I know that it was a favorable return as far as the chips go and things like that. But the reality is I'd like to see you take the best player that you possibly can in the 2023 draft.
Or maybe trade up. Maybe
okay, that's fine too. I just don't want to keep going backwards all the time. I think that gets too cute. Spielman loved that, and it
might have been too because he was pretty clear about saying in this particular draft, 2022, we felt like late first round to like end of the third round, early fourth round, that the talent level was pretty flat. So we just wanted a bunch of picks in that range, whatever. Like, so maybe this draft is different. Maybe there's 25 players and the Vikings are on that fringe and they want to get up. Maybe they see a quarterback. That's another discussion. I was kind of looking back at those Chiefs teams too. I know every time we bring this up, it's like, you guys are haters.
You are a hater, but it's a juicy discussion.
Haters.
Yeah, why can't you enjoy 10-2? Like, why are you looking at quarterbacks right now? Why are you about to say the Alex Smith comparison? Why are you doing that to this show?
Well, the Alex Smith comparison is the apples to apples. When you have a really good quarterback, and so Alex, this is the best part. Alex Smith.
Oh, I love it.
This was ruthless by the Chiefs. Ruthless. 2016 Chiefs, and Alex Smith was a Pro Bowler in 2016. He, played 15 games, had a 90-plus passer rating. He was like a fringe top 10 quarterback, but very conservative. He wasn't going to throw you 30 touchdown passes. So, and they decide after a season in which I think they had been a winning team for multiple years in a row, they went 12-4 that season, and they lost a division. So they got a first-round bye, and they lost a divisional round game to the Steelers, 18-16. And Andy Reid said, "Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if we can go any further with this." So they traded up like 17 spots, grabbed Patrick Mahomes. And then the next season, Alex Smith started again because Mahomes sat. They went 10-6 that year, and then they lost 22-21 to the Titans. I think didn't the Titans come back down?
Yeah, they did.
A bunch of points in that game or something.
There was like 3 instances, I think, where the Chiefs went to the playoffs with Alex Smith and their defense blew like multiple point leads.
Yeah. He was actually pretty great in that game, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But so they went to the playoffs again, 10 wins. So a 12-win season, a 10-win season in which they drafted their quarterback of the future between. And those were back-to-back Pro Bowl years for Alex Smith. In that last year, he led the league in passer rating. He led the league in average yards per attempt. And he had career highs in like 3 or 4 other categories. Yards, touchdowns. It was the best year of his career. And they already had Mahomes, but they decided we're gone. So at some point, the Vikings they're going to have to do one of two things. Ride Kirk off a cliff, which may be age 35, it may be 40. He takes pretty good care of his body. We don't really know. Or make a really hard decision to draft the replacement while he's still pretty good.
Well, and don't you think the gears are churning right now in the mind of young Kevin O'Connell about how far do I think I can take this guy? I mean, that's what Reid did. He basically decided. I mean, Kevin O'Connell right now, like it or not, is thinking one question. How far can the quarterback, who I've tricked up and done a good job with, and who, by the way, seems to like a lot, how far can he take this team? And like, that's where this year becomes incredibly interesting because, I mean, the playoffs are going to have a big part of the process in O'Connell's mind. Because once you get to the playoffs, it's a different ballgame. And can Kirk take this team to a championship? Or the Alex Smith comparison, can he take them to the playoffs? Can he maybe win a playoff game, but he's not a Super Bowl guy?
Think about how ballsy it is. You came off a 12-win season. Your quarterback is very good. He's definitely one of the 10 to 15 best quarterbacks in the league, which is kind of where Kirk has been. And instead of saying, okay, wow, that burned, that playoff loss burned, what can we add in the first round? Do we need a defensive tackle? Do we need another wide receiver weapon? What can we add to make this team better? They said, let's trade a bunch of draft capital and find a better quarterback and sit him for a year.
Yeah.
That's one of the most, and by the way, they could have been wrong too. There wasn't a 100% chance that they were going to be right on Patrick Mahomes. They made that move liking him, hopeful. There were some Brett Favre comparisons, but ultimately the most sure they could have been was like 75% sure that they were drafting a guy that wouldn't be a bust, and they did it anyways.
And I think it worked. And I think that's part of the self-confidence and hubris that good coaches have. They have, because I mean, Kevin O'Connell is here to guide a football team, to coach a team, to hire staff. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the main reason why he got this job was the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. Like, that's why. Like, the Vikings had been through a situation with a defensive coach who would bring in the Kubiaks of the world, right? And at one time, Norv Turner, certainly guys that knew quarterback play, and it wasn't good enough. Kevin O'Connell, if you were to look at like what are the attributes of why he was hired by the Vikings, I think the top one would be he's considered a quarterback whisperer.
Yeah, and you can see it. Even though Kirk's overall performance has taken a dip, the work that Kevin O'Connell has done with Kirk in the key moments, the teeth clenching moments of football games.
Yes.
And also there was a play, the Jalen Reagor throw, 36 yards down the field. We broke that down with Boone on trenches.
Got hit.
When you watch that play back from the end zone cam, so I can't remember which lineman it was, but a Jets lineman literally came around on a twist and had just a free run at Kirk.
Yep.
And it was a really long developing play.
Yep.
I mean, it was like Jalen Reagor had to run over and around, and so they needed like way more than the 2.5 seconds that you're supposed to give a quarterback to develop that route. And it wasn't like a blindside rush where you don't know you're about to get hit. Kirk knew for 6 or 7 yards of distance that he was going to get smoked.
Mm-hmm.
And he stood in there knowing that he was going to get smoked. He threw that ball up. There were 2 safeties basically bracketing at that point. They didn't start the play bracketing Jalen Reagor, but like the way the route played out, Jalen Reagor's running. He's got a safety running right behind him, and then another safety that's running toward where the ball is going to be. It was an effort ball by Kirk. In the second quarter, he just said, screw it. I'm going to take a huge hit. Justin Jefferson's kind of in the middle of the field. I could throw the underneath route, but he just threw a ball 40 yards down the field. Just said, bleep it. I don't think he does that in the first few years.
Hell
In fact, I don't think there was really an outlet. I think he probably just takes the sack in the first few years or maybe throws it away. In this case, he just threw it short because he got smoked, and it worked. And he needs to see that those types of plays can work if you just have some faith in your receivers.
And his statistics are down because of what he's being asked to do. Like, there's no question that, like, this is not a weird, well, why are Kirk's stats down? Like, they are down because for the most part, he is not stepping on the field on a game day with everything tailored to exactly what he's comfortable with. But he's also making plays now when he has to, which to me, he didn't do previously. So like there is a give and take here of an exchange for why the stats are down, but it's leading to wins. So who cares?
Yeah. Yep. All right, we gotta pause here because we're gonna get to write that down predictions and an accountability session. A shout out to our friends over at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. They've been since 1904 a great guiding hand for countless businesses around the state of Minnesota and outside the state of Minnesota. You can find out more about the company's history, relationship building, risk management, federatedinsurance.com, where you can find a full list of industries that they work with. You can find your marketing representative. Again, federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. Write that down coming up.